Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back putting a positive spin on The Godfather Part 3. Ever since its release in 1990, The Godfather Part 3 has been criticized. So Jason and I knew right away when we started this positive spin series that we would eventually be giving this movie a positive spin. I guess you could say it's hated to some degree, but even still, The Godfather Part 3 has a 7.6 out of 10 rating on IMDb, which is still pretty high for any film. Of course, that's low in comparison to The Godfather's 9.2 rating and The Godfather Part 2's 9.0. Yet, when people talk about this one, you would think it would have a much lower rating than 7.6. There are those who consider this sequel a masterpiece like the first two, critics and fans alike. I happen to be one of those people. Like stated in The Sopranos, The Godfather Part 3 is misunderstood. Those of you who know me well know I'm an Italian guy from a big Italian family. If you've had a conversation with me outside of YouTube, that's probably clear based on my accent. In my YouTube videos, I use sort of a radio voice so that everyone can clearly understand what I'm saying. In my normal everyday conversations, the Italian comes out. I'm saying all this to make a point. The Godfather trilogy is very important to me. I actually consider it to be the greatest movie trilogy ever made. In fact, I consider The Godfather to be the greatest film ever made. But just because I think that one is the best doesn't mean it's necessarily my favorite of the three. Many people rank The Godfather Part 2 above the original, but I don't. For me, and I know I'm in the minority with this one, The Godfather Part 3 is my favorite of the trilogy. It's an unpopular opinion. I get that. But before you don't take it seriously, let me ask a question. Why is it that when people hate things, movies in particular, they want everyone to know they hate it, despite whether that's a popular opinion or not? Even if it's a film other people love, when someone hates a movie, they want to make it clear that they hate it. In contrast, when someone loves a movie that the masses seem to hate, they're almost reluctant to admit that they like it. Why is this the case? Why are people so reluctant to admit when they love something and it's an unpopular opinion? But whether or not it's a popular opinion to hate something, people want everyone to know they hate it. Whether it was Halloween Ends, the Elm Street remake, or The Godfather Part 3. When it comes to film, be proud to love the movies you love. Who knows, your opinion might not be as unpopular as you think. There may be others out there who love the film just as much as you do, but are reluctant to admit it. Now, before I get into my positives for The Godfather Part 3, I just want to point out this is my 2-tape VHS edition of the final director's cut with additional footage. And what's really cool about this is the tapes are gold. In preparation for this positive spin, Jason and I watched both this final director's cut as well as the Coda cut together. The Coda cut, which is now Francis Ford Coppola's definitive version, is also known as The Godfather Part 3 Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. Gotta be honest though, as a big fan of this movie, I still prefer this final director's cut. Apparently, it wasn't so final. I have lots to say about this one, so I'll try to limit it to just some of my positives. If not, this video would probably get way too long. So, here we go. My positives for The Godfather Part 3. First of all, this is my personal favorite because of the rewatchability. Now, that's not to say the first two are not rewatchable, because they definitely are. I've seen those two movies maybe more than most other movies. A big reason for that is the fact that they are usually played around Thanksgiving time every year. That's why Jason and I decided to give The Godfather Part 3 a positive spin this weekend. By the way, we also watched The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 together before watching Part 3. Now, the irony of us giving The Godfather Part 3 a positive spin on this Thanksgiving weekend is that they usually skip it when they show the Godfather movies on TV. Typically, they show Part 1 and Part 2. Maybe that's why I find this one so rewatchable, because I haven't seen it as many times as the other two. Believe me though, regardless, I've still seen it many times. I really like the opening narration from Michael and the flashbacks to previous events, such as Fredo's death. Of course, the opening is different in the Coda Cut. Here's the Coda Cut on Blu-ray. As you can see, it says the definitive new edits, according to Francis Ford Coppola. I'm not sure I agree, but hey, it's his film. I would take maybe a few things from this version and utilize them in the final director's cut, but overall, I do prefer that version. For one thing, Coda is missing one of my favorite scenes. The scene of Vincent, Connie, and Al Neri in the chapel. That's a big positive for me, and it's missing from The Godfather Coda. In the final director's cut, that scene comes shortly after maybe the one scene people ever talk about in this sequel. When Michael's in the kitchen and he says, "Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in." It's a classic, dare I say, iconic moment in the trilogy, and a positive for me. You know, I feel this movie is another case where people say they hate it, but haven't actually seen it, or at least haven't seen it in a while. Quick story, I remember talking to someone about this trilogy a while back, and this person claimed to be a big fan of the films. Well, the first two anyway. When I mentioned my love for Part 3, he talked about how much worse he thought it was than the first two, and how different it was. But as the discussion continued, I started to get the idea that he hadn't even seen it based on things he was saying. Sure enough, after a few minutes, he admitted he had never actually seen The Godfather Part 3, and was just going off of what he had always heard about it. Suddenly, instead of saying, "It's worse than the first two," he said, "I heard it was worse than the first two, and I heard how different it is." It makes me wonder, how many people form their own opinions off of someone else's? And if that's what's happening, how far back does this chain go? This person's opinion is based off of this person's opinion, which is based off of this person's opinion, who might not have even seen the movie. For example, what if I had never seen The Godfather Part 3, and I was talking to this person who told me how bad it was and how different it was, and then I decided not to see it based on that, and then went around telling everyone how much worse The Godfather Part 3 is to Part 1 and 2. Why do people do this? It reminds me of that video I posted a few months back, but let's leave that in the past. This is a positive spin, so let's continue with the positivity. I love that the atmosphere is immediately established, with the leaves blowing in the wind. I like that the foundation Michael created is called the Vito Corleone Foundation. In my opinion, it's a nice way of keeping Marlon Brando connected to the trilogy. Vincent Mancini, who later becomes Don Vincenzo Corleone, is probably my favorite character in the entire trilogy. I love that he's the son of Sonny Corleone and Sonny's Gumara, who we see in the first Godfather film. That was a great way of somehow continuing Sonny's connection to the trilogy. Vincent is hilarious, and I like that Michael acknowledges he has a temper like his father. Joe Mantegna is a cool villain as Joey Zasa, and I like that he's a famous gangster on the cover of magazines. My next positive is one I know is an unpopular opinion, because it's usually one of the things people hate most about the movie, and that's the casting of Sofia Coppola. First of all, I think it's really cool that she appears in all 3 films of the trilogy, in different roles. Winona Ryder was originally cast as Mary, but then she dropped out to film Edward Scissorhands. I gotta say, and this is of course without seeing Winona in the role, I do think Sofia was a better fit. For one thing, she has that natural Italian look. Her performance, which I know a lot of people consider bad acting, in my opinion is realistic. She's a young girl, the daughter of the Don. I don't know, I just don't see how she's that bad. Her performance didn't earn an Oscar nomination, although Andy Garcia's did, but I truly don't believe she deserved the Razzies she won either. I also think she was pretty cute in this, and she had good chemistry with Vincent. So yes, believe it or not, one of my positives for The Godfather Part 3 is Sofia Coppola. I liked Bridget Fonda as Grace Hamilton. She's another positive. I love the party scene in the beginning of the film, and the fact that Johnny Fontaine returns. It's also mentioned that the cake was sent over by Enzo the baker. He was in Part 1 as well. I love throwbacks like that, so those are big positives for me. I love what Connie has become in this one, and I'll leave it at that. I think it's awesome that even though Robert Duvall declined to return, they still have Tom Hagen's son as a character in The Godfather Part 3. It's a way of keeping his character connected. This movie really does a great job with that sort of thing. I love the storyline. It's established right away, and we know exactly where it's going. Another huge positive for me is the attempted hit on Vincent in his apartment. He's just cool and confident with the way he handles the intruders. And I love the way he smacks Grace on the ass after he saves her. I feel that scene really showcases his character. I find the Vatican storyline interesting, and the fact that it's based on true events. But I won't get into specifics in case we cover this movie again during Controversial View. Genko Olive Oil makes an appearance in the film. That's a positive. Catherine Scorsese, Martin Scorsese's mother, has a cameo. Another positive. Al Neri was always one of my favorite characters in the first 2 films, and I like him more than ever in this one. Then there's the helicopter attack. What a scene. It's one of the reasons I find The Godfather Part 3 the most exciting in the trilogy. I just have the most fun watching this one, if that makes sense. I also love the feast scene and what happens during that, which I won't spoil. I like Zasa at the feast talking about Italian pride. I think the pacing is great in this. Even the longest version of this film is shorter than the previous 2. I love the scene of Michael thinking of his true love, Apollonia, as Tony sings the song from Corleone. And then later, Mary looks through photographs of Apollonia. I like the edit of Michael asking Vincent to talk to Don Altabello and the subsequent conversation between the two. The scenery. That is another big positive for me. It's the contrast of gritty Manhattan against beautiful Italy. It's really cool that they filmed so much of this movie in Vatican City. There's the music and that classic Godfather score. I like when Michael gives Tony the picture he colored for him in Part 2. And then there's Michael surprising Kay in the car when he's driving her around Italy. That's a really nice humanizing moment for Michael. In fact, that whole sequence of them exploring the city together is. I love Connie's dedication to Vincent's rise to the top. It was really cool seeing the return of Carlo from the original film, as well as Don Tomasino. For those of you who don't know, Carlo was Michael's trusted bodyguard in Italy from part 1. It's great seeing Michael more playful at times in this, especially with Kay when they're in Italy. With the exception of certain scenes, obviously, he seems more at ease in this one, since he's trying to make the family business legitimate. The passing of the torch scene gives me chills every time I watch it. Every time. Vincent Mancini becoming Don Vincenzo Corleone. Amazing. I love the third act in the opera house and watching Don Vincenzo set up the plan. Then we literally get to see Connie carry out a hit via cannoli. There's the sad but poignant moments of Don Vincenzo choosing the life over his love, Mary, and telling her, love somebody else. Al Neri with the gun in the box of cookies, and Carlo with the eyeglasses kill. The play at the opera looks pretty awesome itself, with the skull masks. I love the cut from the Pope lying dead in his bed to Jesus on the cross in the play. Yet another big positive is Michael's silent scream on the opera steps, and then the transition to the dancing sequences. That scene is absolutely heartbreaking. Michael dancing with Mary, then dancing with Kay, then dancing with Apollonia. And then, of course, one last orange. The death of Michael Corleone. Guys, I can't even tell you how much I left off of my list of positives. There are so many more I could tell you, but this video would go on forever. I love The Godfather Part 3. It is my favorite in the trilogy, and I'm not ashamed to say so. In my opinion, it's an underrated and underappreciated masterpiece. Again, I know it's an unpopular opinion, and many of you won't agree. But you don't have to. This is just my positive spin. Please be sure to check out Jason's as well to hear what he has to say about The Godfather Part 3. How about you? What do you think of it? And if you hate The Godfather Part 3, comment below and let me know why. Which hated movie will we next give a positive spin? Check back soon to find out. Until then, thanks for watching, guys. Hit that thumbs up and be kind. Subscribe.